the most fascinating thing about wine, I mean, we all have our reason for being, passionate or wine lovers. But I mean, for me, the most fascinating thing about wine is that there is no other product, and I don't even like to call it product in a sense, but it is, let's say, a produce from the earth that can condense in itself so many different and deep things. So there is millennial history, there is traditions, there is geographical places, there is histories of people, family.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This is the next generation with me, McKenna Cassidy. For the next episode, I invite you to explore with me what young adults are up to in the Italian wine scene. Let's feast on our discussion of Italian wine and culture. Grab a glass with us. Chin chin. Hello, everyone. I'm McKenna from the Italian Wine Podcast. So excited to be joined today by our special guest, Luca Paolo Virgilio. Welcome, Luca Paolo. Good to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and big hello to everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to be a special guest.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. You got the cool title today. And but your normal title and also a cool one is winemaker and co-owner of Caprera from Pietranico in Abruzzo. And we're so excited to learn about not only the farm, you have about 22 hectares of land, 4.5 of which are planted to vine, Pecorino, Passarina, Trebbiano Abruzzese, Montepulciano. And I'm a huge fan of your wines. I just drank them last week. I just love them. And I'm so excited to learn your perspective, but also the farm and what your overall project is on your land in Abruzzo. So we're so delighted to hear directly from you about your projects and also your life and get to know you more as a winemaker and as a person. So welcome, be at peace. We're so excited for the conversation. So let's dive in. If you could introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what exactly do you do in the day-to-day, and we'll roll from there.
Right, so what a marvelous introduction. That makes me feel very proud and blush a little bit. Anyway, I try my best and to be very short on that. So my name is Luca Paolo, which is actually two names, and I'm 40 years old. And as we were saying, it doesn't qualify me so much as a next generation, winemaker, but still I'm a new winemaker in a certain sense. So I'm from Abruzzo, so I was born and raised in Abruzzo, which is a tiny region in central Italy. Most people that are familiar with Italian wine probably know where Abruzzo is. I lived most of my, youth in L'Aquila, which is the capital city, which is a city in the mountains. So not quite, especially in the past, not quite an area used to winemaking, to wine growing, or to make like good wines at least. But then I studied political science. I studied in Rome, a little bit abroad. Then I took a master in London, so I went a little bit, around. I had the different plans when I was young for my future. It wasn't really plans, I was just, trying my way. And I started working into social research back in Rome at the time. And that was the time I started falling in love with wine. There was actually a specific revelation drinking a wine one day, by definition, a so-called natural wine that opened up all the ways.
Do you remember what the wine was?
Absolutely. It was a Trebbiano, which was, but it's from Sicily, from the producer, the winemaker Francesco Guccione, who is actually, I think, a great person and a wonderful guy that I met, and we became friends after that. But that's where my journey started. But other than that, I mean, I started this when I was 28, together with my father's best friend. So I wanted to make wine at some point. It was kind of slow and gradual approach that went through organizing an artisanal wine fair with some friends in a very remote village of Abruzzo. So, Abruzzo is this kind of still small, very traditional, very family-centered environment. It's a southern region. It's the north of the south of Italy, or it's, the south of the center, depending on how you look at it. But it's still a very traditional and very genuine, authentic place to be and live, and it's very much still connected to the land, to farming. Most people still have their own piece of land. So I think it's some place where, growing up still keeps you, especially if you're out of the main cities that are still small, very much linked to nature and, life outdoor and so on. So, yeah, well, I mean, the project of Caprera is pretty new. I mean, it's just 13 years, which is pretty much nothing in winemaking. I have just 9 harvests in my background, in my personal history. Sometimes they seem, they feel like there are many, but actually they are not. It's like I just started. So still, finding my way, experimenting and going. I mean, I will be like that I think, for the rest of my life. So
Do you notice a difference in your outlook and attitude from your first and second vintage to your eighth and ninth vintage? How has your attitude changed? Are you more stressed, less stressed, more creative, less creative? What's that been like?
so unfortunately, stress is a big factor in my life. So it seems that I'm very much, is my invisible friend who's always with me, but I'm getting to manage it better. The thing is, I mean, of course, there's been a great change in, the self-awareness experience. It's not just that I became more secure, of course, of what I'm doing, of what at least, some core parts of my activity, but it's also on the other end running a winery, a farm in this case, but I mean, in general, any sort of enterprise is also discovering and finding coming across new challenges, every time. So it's an ongoing process. It's a never going process. But of course, I feel, more secure in many things, but I have to say, probably the things that are most valuable in which I made more progress are general management of everything. And by everything, it really means everything, the people around, and, the actual things to do and the planning and so on. But it's still a long way to go, a very long way to go. And, second key aspect, the people around us, around me, the people that are working at Caprera, the people that are, partners or wanna be partners, because this is still, a company, and we started this in two, and we are still two, but probably will be two again in the future. So, but in a different setting. So that, I think, is a crucial part of my situation.
That's awesome. Let's talk about the farm a little bit. I'm interested because many wineries don't have like a separate farm necessarily, or a cohesive farm rather. Since we can't go there physically at this moment, could you describe it to us? Tell us, it's 22 hectares. Is it very hilly? Where's the barn? Like, how do you have, where the vine's situated next to the other crops, the barley, the wheat, the woodlands, etc.? What's the space like?
So thanks for asking, because this is probably the one most important point for me to in describing where we are and what we do and what we are actually, because that's exactly the reason why I'm there, why I chose to settle there, because, I started from scratch. We bought the property, so we had no family background, no personal history, no property. So why we chose that place? We are in a marvelous place. I mean, for sure, most producers, probably every producer in the world will say the same, but really, I happen to, to have like guests visiting us, clients, importers, and actually a few of them, several of which Americans as well, they really say that was probably the most beautiful place they've ever been when it came to vineyards, in Bangalore. So the thing with Pietranico and Caprera, but of course, I mean, Caprera is just a small slice of this beautiful territory, is the actual wilderness and greenness and nature and the variety and the diversity of nature that you have there. So you have to keep in mind that Abruzzo is the one region in Europe, so the one small local region in Europe with the highest percentage of surface that is made of protected natural areas. So we are very tiny. You can drive like in less than 2 hours from one side to another, from the mountains to the sea, 3,000 meters altitude to zero, probably even less than 2 hours. It's very tiny, very concentrated, but the diversity is huge and it's very wide. So we have big mountains, we have the lakes, we have forests, and then we have this very traditional, typical Italian hilly countryside. Nothing to say against that. It's amazing, but that is not quite the average Tuscan, postcard that most people would think. It's wild. So, I mean, if you just step out from our cellar at Caprera, you have this rocky mountain in front of you, the top of which is very rocky, and then it starts being like, green, and then the forest, and then you have the wheat fields, and then you have the breeds, and then the olive trees, and some vineyards here and there. The place is super wild. It's also unpopulated, so that makes it also wilder. And unfortunately, that's the other side of the coin. It's been farming, especially, has been increasingly abandoned over the last decade. So nature is taking over and over and over, but that makes it a super wild place. So Caprera is 22 hectares, some vineyards, some olive trees, I mean, many olive trees, 600, but there is hectares of forest. It's very diverse. It's very hilly. It's very, different exposures. One part is actually facing the Adriatic Sea, which is 35 minutes drive away, but you can see it and really smell it. We named a wine after the wind and salt coming from the sea. Another part is really enclosed in the mountains. So you feel like you are in your hole, in your nest, like a wild animal. So diversity, wilderness, and nature at its best.
It sounds like the question that like some couples when they're dating ask each other, or like friends ask each other. They're like, "Do you want to live in the mountains or the sea?" And it's kind of like a dividing thing. Here, you're basically
Why choosing?
the answer is yes.
Why
Perfect.
choosing if you can have both? We are definitely more by the mountains. Definitely. We are at the feet of the mountains, pretty high for around the 500 meters above the sea level. We grow olive trees. We grow ancient varieties of wheat. We have been making pasta in the recent years and some flour. But of course, growing vines, and it's the main thing. I mean, making wine is the main thing.
What's the tradition between the farming and the vasque? Which there's, different forms of vasque that are not called vasque elsewhere in the country, but like, can you talk about the vasque and why are they there? And what's the association with the farming that's now being abandoned and the vasque?
Of course, absolutely. So to explain the people who will listen to this, vasque are stone basins, so naturally occurring rocks found on the land, especially in the precise area of Pietranico, which is the hill facing west side, which is the one where the main site of Caprera is located, which is called Vasca, like Vasca area, named after them, of course. These natural rocks have been over the centuries used, well, they were hand carved to obtain basins used for grape crushing. So the rocks were there in place. Of course, the people couldn't ever move such big rocks. And they would use those rocks, outstanding example, human ingenuity and the relation between, of course, farming relation with the earth, with the soil, the work that people were doing, but at the same time, the need to make the work, which was already super, super like filled with effort and human, like really physical fatigue, making it a little bit easier. So at least trying to avoid the effort that could be avoided. So the point of the basket was the place was mostly covered with vineyards and olive trees at the time. Vineyards and olive trees. Pietranico has always been, since at least the 13th century, a place popular in the area for vine growing, not winemaking. Winemaking was a home thing. It was like, something that people would do for their own consumption, but most of the production would live and be sold elsewhere. But most of the grapes would be crushed on site, right where the vineyards were located, in order to just get the must and get rid of the waste, the skins and the seeds and everything else being the waste. Imagine that still today, the people that still make wine at home, they have maybe a small vineyard, there in Pietranico and in the area. When they make Montepulciano, so our main red wine, they do not use the skins. So they just press it and just ferment the must without skin. So it was a tradition, but it was a tradition also related to the climate that was much colder in the past. So maturation was really difficult. So they would get rid of the unripe part of the skins and the seeds. They would make it easier to just transport the product, and sell it elsewhere. So
Okay, that's helpful. That makes a ton of sense and such an interesting feature, and nice that you get to like incorporate those in, that they're on the land that you purchased anyway. What's your philosophy for this whole project? Why are you doing this? This is so different from political science in London. You have a sense of fulfillment in this. There's something you want to convey about this place and like it fulfills you. Tell me about that.
So I think reaching the exact, reason, the most really inner, deep reason why I'm there is probably going to be the quest of my life. And probably we can go back to this in 20 or 30 years. But I'm starting to put the pieces together, besides being attracted, to wine, of course, being in the open air, doing something on my own, actually creating something from my hands, being deeply rooted, to something. I'm always been someone who's searching for the deeper and meaning in things in what I was doing. So even the social policy thing, I'm still interested in those matters, absolutely, just not as a job. I'm interested in social matters, in what regulates relations between people, countries, politics, and so on, but not the gossipish like aspect of it. It's like the actual things behind, the dynamics behind. So I think that what I'm trying to pursue here is, first of all, expressing myself, of course, like something that everyone should be doing. But I think I was really searching for some stronger connection with the origin of something, of life and of everything. And I'm seeing that I really needed to, as a person that otherwise is normally, in the world of the ideas, thinking and overthinking and overthinking. And, I was probably kind of attracted to just the opposite. So being deeply rooted, in farming, you have to be there to do things no matter, the weather regularly. Every season they change, but at the same time, they're still always the same. So it's an exercise of patience, of like consistency. And I don't know if that is actually answering your question. I got a little bit lost in that. But, and of course, it's making wine. And then the whole meaning of wine is something that, would open up a totally new debate.
What's like a non-wine related thing that you love about living in Abruzzo, aside from farming? What do you like to do for fun?
So the one thing I think is mostly interesting and captivating about Abruzzo is, and that's something that everybody that visits Abruzzo, even for a couple of days, finds, it's a very still quite peaceful place where you can live an easy life. I mean, we all live stress life and we have our problems, of course, but still compared to the problems that you have in major cities or in richer areas, you have a lot of nature, you have a lot of rural life. You have a lot of actual connections and human bonds. So, especially out of the main cities, there is strong, the people are often arguing. There are all these jealousies of, especially in the small towns, but there is people that talk, that know each other. There is this kind of social like control, and the kids can just run outside and play freely, and nobody's worried. So this is one thing. There is this general feeling of being in a place, in an area that is still connected to its tradition and to the past, which doesn't mean it's outdated, or it's just authentic. It's genuine. The food is great, nature is great, the landscapes are great. You can ski, you can go to the beach, you can surf, you can just trek, hike, climb, go by the lakes, do wonderful walks in the mountains. And there are big, nice cities and nice towns. You can have great wines, and that's enough, I would say, to explain
Yeah,
why it's nice to live in a Broodstone. What
that's
do
awesome.
I do? What do I do for fun? Well, partly I do some of the things I mentioned. I have to say, a lot of time I rather relax or try to relax, because still, I mean, there is not much space left for fun during the most challenging, at least the most intense periods of work. But the one thing I like the most out of work is traveling and eating. So I do travel. I love exotic traveling. So going to remote places, seeing other cultures like Asia, Africa, or whatever. And luckily, my partner, she's as eager as me, probably even more, for traveling and eating. I mean, eating and drinking is like probably the greatest pleasure I have in life. And I try to do that as much as I can, less than I would like to.
This is awesome. What is one of the foods that makes your wines shine the best? Whether it's the Trebbiano or the Salevento, like what food pairing goes really well?
So that's a good question to for someone who's very very bad at food pairing. But because they've asked me that
What it's
before,
just what you like to eat with it.
so I would start from the wines, because my favorites are Pecorino and Girasolo. So probably I would do the my favorite pairings with them. So one thing I love, and Abruzzo, okay, here is one of the most traditional foods dishes you can find here all over the region. It's sheep and lamb. So the famous arrosticini, the chopsticks made
Yeah.
of sheep meat, and lamb. Lamb, we do it in all possible ways, so roasted or BBQ. But one of my favorite is a very traditional recipe, is also with eggs and lemon. But my favorite is probably it's pan fried, with covered with grated bread crumble, and then
Uh-huh.
it's fried, deep fried. So it's these slices of lamb, fresh lamb meat that get fried, and they are, well, one of the most like savory things that you
That
can
sounds
ever
amazing.
taste in the world. And Swallow, which is a great wine. Uh,
Hmm.
be it mine or someone else, it doesn't matter. They do, I think, a perfect pairing, and it really makes you taste, Abruzzo. It's something like it's substantial. It's not just. I'm more for traditional cooking than gourmet. I like, of course, both experiences, but for the daily experience, of course, traditional and home cooking.
Yeah, heard that. That sounds amazing. Absolutely. Okay, one more rapid fire question and then we'll go back to our philosophy. So, what's your favorite plant to farm that's not Vitis vinifera? And then, what's your favorite vine?
Coming to the plant, so probably there is one, but I cannot mention here in Italy, because we have different laws than the US.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. I've never been a grower in that sense, but you can do it.
We're
But
not
yeah,
allowed to grow certain things. Yep, heard.
well, I think you are in the U.S., but anyway, most states at least.
Yes.
No, well, I love tomatoes. I love the tomato plants. They are so different. There are many, but I mean, the one thing I love the most about the tomato plant, another one is the cherry tree, sour cherry, like wild cherry.
Mhm.
It's the fact, the very act of picking the. Well, I mean, you can do it from also from vines. You do it, but the act of picking, cherries or tomatoes and eat them right away on the spot. And in summer, you're sometimes, like just thirsty, and instead of drinking some water, you grab this super red, fully ripe tomato, so savory, filled with juice, but very concentrated, and you eat it. I mean, I love that plant. That plant is amazing, and I love the smell of the plant. Of course, I love the flowers of the cherry trees, and that's amazing. And they announce spring coming. But of course, there is olive trees. I mean, those are amazing plants that live for up to 1,000 years. So they are majestic, and there is some respect that I feel, when I look at the plants and I'm by them. So it's more than one, but I love them all. I love actually a lot of plants, but these are probably the three favorite that we have in the farm.
This is awesome.
And about the vine variety, I wouldn't say there is one I like most. I mean, they're all nice in their way, so I can tell a few differences. Montepulciano, like, is very wild. It's like a song that never obeys, you know, because you put it straight like this, and you try to constrain it to standing and grow like vertical like that, but it doesn't comply, never. So it just goes wherever it wants, and it's super. On the other hand, pecorino is very aristocratic. It just grows like so linear and stands by itself, and it's very slim. So it's noble, and to some extent, I mean, I like the wilder side of other vines better.
Yeah.
Probably Trebbiano is something in between. One thing about Trebbiano is super expressive, super vigorous. So you have these big like leaves, you have these big branches, these huge like bunches. So it's super powerful. I really love them all. I
Yeah.
really love them all.
This is awesome. Thank you for sharing this. So, I want to, as we bring our conversation towards its completion, you hinted at something earlier about the meaning of wine and how that would crack open a whole other conversation. But I wonder what you meant by that. And then also how we were speaking before we started recording the podcast about kind of wine as a cultural product or a matter of taste, and how the speed and the desire for immediate gratification of perhaps new friends of wine or new drinkers of wine might be in contrast to the richness and the meaning behind wine, but also can come together like the Third Coast Swaff you visited in Chicago, and you saw many young people enjoying the natural
Absolutely.
wines. So, first, like, what do you mean by the meaning behind the wine? And take your time to explain. And then, how does that connect, if at all, to that kind of cultural product versus a matter of taste in wine?
Thank you for asking. That's of course a big issue, a big theme to just develop here in a very few minutes. But I try to my best at least to give an idea of what I think. So the most fascinating thing about wine, I mean, we all have our reason for being passionate or wine lovers. But I mean, for me, the most fascinating thing about wine is that there is no other product, and I don't even like to call it product in a sense, but it is. Let's say a produce from the earth that can condense in itself so many different and deep things. So there is millennial history, there is traditions, there is geographical places, there is histories of people, family. Why do the people have been growing vine for centuries and killing for it and being killed for it, and how you say, like bringing like this and keeping it through generations, and why has it been so precious for so many different parts of society? So wine is not just something to be pleased for drinking it while having a nice dinner, which is of course a big part of it, but it's all, I mean, in that glass of wine you can find, I mean, a concentration of culture that is second to nothing else in the world. So when we discuss about wine, when we talk about wine, just in terms of a commercial product, I understand, that part of the market. Of course, it's a different part of the market. It's the big industry. It's the widest production of wine in the world. So, it's okay. It's a different thing. But wine is really something beyond, and we should never forget, and we should never neglect to mention that wine is first and foremost a product of the earth and a cultural product. So when we think on how to, to engage like the younger generations, I don't think we should leave the path of culture, because I think in that path there can be a strong attraction also for the younger generations. Younger people are unfortunately exposed to a whole set of incredibly intense stimuluses that come from technology, so like the social and phones, and everything is so quick, and wine is not quick. Wine needs to be slow. It requires some patience, some attention, you don't have to study to enjoy wine, but at least, if you really want to connect with it and listen to it, you need to give it the right time and attention. So natural wines, the most simple, very basic, very direct natural wines are a great way of engaging the younger generations. I've seen, bunches in many countries around the world, especially out of the Western world, emerging countries, these guys drinking wine and drinking the easiest thing, the cheapest and the lower alcoholic. So, this like pet nut, natural, great way to engage them, to make them, to bring them to wine. But then let's not leave the path of, wine as a cultural product, as something rooted in the earth, rooted in traditions, making like deep, meaningful wines and telling meaningful stories.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all of your perspectives. I think that we could talk for like 8 hours and never exhaust
We'll keep talking after this.
Yes, it's true. I want to thank all of the listeners for joining us today. And before we wrap, I would just like to say thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability, Luca Paolo, for sharing all of the details that you did. Is there anything else you would like the listeners to know about Caprera, Abruzzo, yourself, your philosophy that could help them get to know you more through the pod?
Well, just check out, I would more be a testimonial of my land, Abruzzo. So please check out Abruzzo. Go look for it in the web. Just check out the amazing places you can spot there, and visit Abruzzo and visit Caprera, of course, once you're here. And try Abruzzo wines. You'll find them in the US and in many other countries in the world. And that's it. Thank you for having me, and really for giving me this opportunity to tell about myself and the farm.
I want to go to the Grotte di Stife, the like caves with the water and the stalactites.
Very nice. Very nice and so chilly at summer. You have like this 30 and 35 degrees outside, and then it's 14 inside. They're very close to my hometown, and I've been there more than once. It's beautiful, beautiful, really.
So cool. There's so much to be explored and enjoyed. I can't wait. Well, thank you again. Ciao, grazie mille. Cin cin.
Tante grazie. Thanks so much for being here with me today. Remember to catch our episodes weekly on the Italian Wine Podcast, available everywhere you get your pods. Salute.